listed out things that the districts might consider doing differently, and on this side, things that the agency or legislature, could think about doing. So I'm just going to be reading these. So on the district side, we talked about connecting the grad rate efforts to specific areas. So this kind of goes back to the bigger issue that many people talked about disaggregating data by student groups so that we're not masking disparities, but we're identifying them in order to address them. So for example, looking at SPED, ELL, and then looking at specific efforts in terms of CCR, and then PLP, Mary, learning plans. Personal learning plans, thank you. Wanting districts to specifically talk about or think about the strategies they're using to improve grad rates. So you set a number, what are you doing? What are you doing to improve those graduate rates for specific student groups? Which student groups are the focus for specific grad and rate improvement efforts? We talked also, John, about MDE prescribing the information that districts provide, because if they have examples of what we've noticed is they tend to grab onto them and use them. So providing them some concrete specific ways to disaggregate their data and identify a reasonable relevant percentage increase for the graduation rate. Everybody could say we want 100% graduation rate, but what are you basing that on? What metrics are you using to identify or to measure, and for which student groups? On the district side, state side, we talked about a legislative need to increase the amount of funding available for the number of years that districts can receive money to provide EL services. So we know there are some student groups that need additional services in order to graduate on time. And right now, the funding available for EL students is limited to 7 years, and could we get an increase there? Same idea in terms of increasing extended time for overage undercredit students within specific student group categories. We talked about framing the questions, I think to your point too, Carolyn, framing the questions differently so we get districts to actually focus on equity. Again, trying to avoid masking disparities, but instead identifying them, talking about them, engaging them, and thinking really thoughtful about how to address them. MDE should suggest perhaps a template that would include data specifically gathered from teachers. So that was a conversation around the stakeholder input, and teachers are on the ground in the classroom with students. To what extent are their thoughts, feedback included and reflected in strategies for increasing the grad rate? And another topic that we talked about for some time was MDE providing more guidance, perhaps a policy letter on extended time programs, in order to shift districts' focus to academic strategies rather than necessarily just purely social, which is good for student engagement, but there's a sense, I think, that extended time funding can be used in more targeted ways to support graduation. Our biggest takeaway, I think, in the end was, how can we increase districts' ownership in use of the World's Workforce Plan as a comprehensive planning tool that actually can lead to positive results? If they're not there, then none of this is going to matter. It's just a matter of filling out a form. So how can we get them to see this as a valuable comprehensive planning tool that will enable them to see the results that they probably very genuinely want to see?